Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organization with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Mari, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GSE's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil, where Asian and African elephants, lovingly referred to as the girls, live their best lives. Hello everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Global Rumblings. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Today's podcast is a sad one, as we will be talking about the recent passing of Tamy, the solitary male Asian elephant at the Mendoza Eco Park in Argentina on the 23rd of June. So let's head over to Brazil to say hi to Kat and also to Scott, who's currently in Argentina. Hi you two.
Hi Nadia, how are you?
Yep, I'm okay. Not really looking forward to today's discussion, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a somber note. It's hard, as, Kat was just saying to me, that, we are still trying to make sense of it all ourselves and trying to process the feelings and still trying to go through all that. And, accepting this reality that it is, then, we're going to try to put on a smiley face and speak about it. And it doesn't really work that way. It's heavy, it's hard, it's frustrating. There's a lot of elements that make it all frustrating. Not only the fact that he didn't make it, which is, knowing that he spent his last days in that concrete hole, but also the considerations for all that led to this point.
I think frustrating is a good word. I was reading some of the comments under your website post and also on Friends of Global Sanctuary for Elephants. I think for me personally, I wasn't angry. I was just incredibly sad, and then I was just so frustrated because we have talked about just this time aspect, so maybe we can talk about that. Or is there a bigger picture that we all are missing? Obviously it can't be down to you as an organization not doing enough, because you are, but what is the bigger picture apart from, let's say, permits? Or is it politics? Why does it take so long, not only to try to rescue Tamy when Pocha and Guillermina were rescued in May 2022, I mean that's 3 years ago, but also all the other elephants? What is happening? The spanner in the woodworks.
Oh, it's called the bureaucracy of our society. If Kat, you can jump in and call it something different. But the reality is that this is not the only facility that is trying to get elephants out. We're trying to get elephants out of these scenarios. In the United States, these things go on for years. We've talked about it before. And then all of a sudden, because we're the white and transparent ones, people think that we're the ones taking longer. We're 15 years into Lucy's campaign, and not even close to end in sight, but if we want to bring it back to a substantial element of the problem, is the long history is when we first talked to them, we didn't even have a property yet. When they first approached us, there's no solutions in the world. Going back to Europe, there's one sanctuary that can accept elephants right now, and they have 2 elephants and don't have space for I think that may have space for 1 more right now. There aren't solutions, so when this all came up here with this transformation, there wasn't even a Elephant Sanctuary Brazil property. There wasn't even an Elephant Sanctuary Brazil organization. We were there trying to make it happen. But then there's all the elements of it. It's the fundraising. It's the licensing. Going back to the conversations before, when we first started in Brazil, they moved our licensing forward in 6 months. And they said, normally this type of licensing takes 3 to 4 years. It could have been 3 to 4 years before we received our first elephant because of how long that process can take. So there's a lot of elements to it. Then there is our society that seems to be working against progress. The bureaucracy that works against progress. The bureaucracy that continues to allow elephants to move to zoos, knowing the negative impact that they cause, but that same processing, the same licensing prevents them from being able to go to a sanctuary that is proven to have substantial benefit. There's people in society and all over social media that are working against these relocations. Right now with Sandro, they have active campaigns, social media campaigns, talking about all the reasons why he should stay on 1,500 square meters, where he spends 16 to 18 hours locked inside a tiny little space of less than 200 square meters with no human interaction. And this is the justification of, this is what he knows. Look, he's doing so well. There was something from the veterinarian there just this week saying, they say he's not doing well, but look, he's 43 years old. Sure. Can you tell what's going on inside of him? Nope. There's not a diagnostic tool in the world that's going to tell you what's going on with him inside, not to the extent that you need to understand. What we do know is that poor diet, small space, all the things that are captivity contribute to compromised health. Let's bring it back to Tammy. Small space, improper diet, not enough care, not enough maintenance on his feet. And 5 years ago, probably somebody could have said, look, he's doing fine. He's over 50 years old. That doesn't mean he's doing fine. Just because he's alive doesn't mean he's fine. Just because Sandro's alive doesn't mean he's fine. And you have a chance to make a positive difference, a known, measurable, positive difference. And people are more comfortable continuing with our society-approved negligence, our society-approved and accepted mistreatment, inherent mistreatment, than making positive change.
Why do you think that is? Because you said it's a measurable success. I mean, all the relocations of the elephants to your sanctuary, to other sanctuaries, have shown they can thrive. Kat in recent podcast said that you didn't teach Puppy how to scrape bark off the tree. She was doing it instinctively on her first night. So I don't know, is it just ignorance? Is it that easy to say? It's ignorance, that they just don't want to see it? What's staring in their face, that elephants after captivity in zoos can adapt in sanctuaries?
I think part of it goes back to the bigger picture of people not everybody, but a lot of people not truly being able to value elephants for just being elephants. They are valuable when they can be tools of education because people can stare at them and see this unnatural life that doesn't even educate them to what the reality of an elephant is. Everybody wants to point the finger at somebody else. Tammy was in that zoo because people wanted to go see him. And I doubt there are many people who are listening who haven't gone to a zoo and who haven't paid to go see some animal they wanted to see. Mostly because people say that they love these animals, and I get that. But that's why he was there. So, yes, it is the fault of bureaucracy and all of the other nonsense that has gone on with the people in Argentina only caring about their elephants when their elephants were supposed to go somewhere else, and so on and so forth. But the reality is he was there because people want to be able to see elephants, and it's all of our faults. We have supporters who say they love our work. They love that we don't let people come see our elephants, that it is their home. And then they donate. They don't donate to us, and they donate to other facilities that allow them to go see their elephants and touch their elephants. It all comes down to, for me, people not genuinely being able to value them just for being them.
It's critical to understand, as Kat's saying, our involvement, and it's our society's involvement. Zoos are still looked at as these education conservation programs. And they are glorified for this. They're allowed to take animals out of the wild for conservation and education, irrelevant to the fact that many of them get sequestered into very substandard facilities. We've talked about it before with the elephants that were imported from Africa back to San Diego, and with this multi-generational herd, well, then you have too much breeding, too many elephants. And then you get sent off to a facility that has one or two males and they have less than an acre. Legal. It's completely legal, and our society accepts it. We have another elephant that just died in Belo Horizonte, which is in Minas Gerais in Brazil. 29-year-old African elephant male who is skin and bones, abscesses on his body.
Oh my gosh.
And their statement is how tragic. We lost our elephant. He was this old. He's been with us since he was 2 years old. But we are the only facility that ever bred elephants in captivity.
Mind you, they had 3 stillborns, and the third one killed the mother who was carrying the baby. And the reason that the male actually did die was because they wanted to give him a more thorough examination and take blood work from him because they didn't know what was wrong with him. And instead of trying to train him for blood draw and to comply with an exam, they decided to sedate him instead. And he died under sedation.
He had been there since he was 2 years old. There's no reason, there's no excuse to not have training. Let's go to Mendoza. There's no reason why he did not have training all these years. There's people available that can help. We paid people to help train this team here to do the same thing, to help them understand how to better care for those elephants while trying to make sanctuary happen. As soon as they were gone, nothing happened here. No diet was changed. Nothing was modified in a positive direction until we had people here committed full time to try to help nurture him, to get him to a place where he could go to sanctuary. But this elephant in Minas Gerais, in Belo Horizonte, no excuse to not have him trained. But what people hang on to, wow, what an amazing zoo. They are the only ones that reproduce in captivity. What a great conservation effort. Not what went wrong. They look at this glorified zoo again. And this is not to put all zoos in the same pocket by any means. There are programs that are substantially improved, without a doubt. But going back to what Kat said, their value is still, I want to see them. I want to be close. I was talking to somebody at the sanctuary the other day. He said, what if you just let people in and could view from a distance? I said, there's still a price tag on their presentation to humans. As long as we have that, elephants are going to continue to suffer. Not just elephants, all of these animals. They are compromised because we want to see them.
Going back to Tamy, you said that after you'd left and you'd made suggestions, something that Kat said before as well in our other podcast, they are not your elephants until they come to your sanctuary. So you can only give recommendations and suggestions. So why didn't the zoo then adhere to your advice if they were committed to relocating Tammy as well? Is that then again because it's a city-owned zoo, because it's bureaucracy, or because, I don't know, some people wanted to keep him there after Pocha and Gijamina had been relocated? What happened?
I am going to be such a ray of sunshine in this podcast. I'm sorry. I think a lot of it comes back to ego. It is the people not wanting to feel like there are other people that know better, that what they're doing is wrong, that they should change things. We've been asked multiple times to give recommendations, and we've given them in all different forms to all different people, but it doesn't matter because I don't believe there was ever this desire to change anything except for to get him out of the zoo. But it completely lacks the understanding that without changing what was going on with him and taking better care of him, he was never going to make it out of the zoo. And yes, it was always a fear we had. It's a fear we have with pretty much every elephant we are trying to get out of the facility they're in. None of them are healthy. I mean, to different degrees. But, there is always this fear that it's not going to happen soon enough. And we've had elephants that haven't been able to get here, and it hasn't happened soon enough. But it doesn't mean we give up on them.
No, that goes with everybody. Let's go back to Ramba. I mean, everybody knows Ramba was sick for years before she came. Does that mean you're not going to try? No. She was given a year to live. Does that mean you don't give her the chance and don't fight and don't raise money and don't build for her? No, you give them a chance. We are fighting every day to get things done as quickly as possible, on our end. And our end is sometimes restricted by the bureaucracy. Let's go back to all the delays that happened here. Pocha and Gijamina. How long was their process delayed? Because citizens, not because of the zoos, but it started with citizens within the country that said, we don't want our elephants to leave. And then because they couldn't get any traction, they started to fabricate information. Mara is dead. All the elephants are diseased. All these things that were false claims. And then our governments have to investigate, which takes time. How many times did they have to come and count that we had 6 elephants? Multiple times. And then a delegate from Argentina comes and they do we talked about this before with Pocha and Gijamina, they come out with how many people that came, and they do a report that's fully falsified information. We didn't give them access to records. We didn't give them access to Mara. All that was crazy until we had to fight back and say, no, here's all the proof that shows this was not the case. And then eventually, because of enough public outcry, their licenses were liberated. That was from the Argentine side. And then with Cookie and Poopy, that was from the Brazil side, again, because of fear of the unknown of what we're all about. Well, the only reason why there's anything unknown is because they're not spending the time to investigate. We're there. We're an open book. Come see us. Come see us. Come see us. all the paperwork's there, everything is in line, but your fear of what could possibly go wrong at some point stops you from being able to emit a permit that is outside of your jurisdiction, actually. So these things that happen that we have no control over, that was 2 years. Again, going back to Poopy and Kooky, the day before, the same day we got the notice that the license had been emitted, Kooky slipped and fell and died in her enclosure. So we've started the paperwork for Tammy, the licensing for Bambi, knowing that it can take some time while we are in these next stages of his development and his care and his training. Unfortunately, again, and tragically again, too little too late because of all these hurdles, because we couldn't move forward with Tammy until we got the others. We couldn't even apply for another permit until we got the permits resolved for Poopy and Kooky in Kenya. Once they were resolved and we had that finalized, then we could start the process for Tammy, but we couldn't throw another process on top of the one that was already delayed. So all these things can't happen simultaneously sometimes. It's infuriating. How many times do we sit back and say, what the F? This is absolutely absurd. What do we have to do to help these elephants? We do everything on our part, but our society is set up against progress.
And not that I'm definitely whatever with the government in Brazil and how ridiculous they were. I'm not giving them an out. But at least I understand the fear of saying it's fine and then having something happen and that being thrown back upon you. But the group, a very small group in Argentina that caused these issues in the first place, for me, they've done this under the guise of we care so much about them. They're a piece of Argentina. The sanctuary is this terrible place. Well, I really hope that you feel terrible that this is how this went, because all the nonsense that you did and the delays that you created, all for selfish reasons. When you didn't do anything with poor Shirima, who died in her 20s in a zoo in Argentina, or the same zoo that had another elephant die in their 20s just before that. Nobody cared then, but all of a sudden when somebody wants to offer your elephants a nice life, you do this. You're the reason he's dead and that he died there. Totally you. I hope you feel good about it.
And that's Argentina, but that's also what's going on in other locations also. Again, going back to Sandro and Suncaba, there are people that are saying he's part of our cultural heritage. Come on. Your cultural heritage is based around a captive elephant. This is something to be proud of. And let's just fight for that so he stays here and doesn't get a better life. You can't do blood work. You can't do food work. You can't do medical exams. The same as what happened with Jumbo. So if something does happen with Sandro, you're going to sedate him too, a sick elephant to sedate him to try to do exams. He might die as well. But there are solutions. There are answers. There's progress that can be made. We just have to be open to that and stop doubting because of fear of what could possibly happen, when what is happening is worse than what could possibly happen if you take a chance on something positive.
This veterinarian that's talking about Sandro, it's so ridiculous that you are a veterinarian and he did this 8-minute long video on TikTok talking about the people that are saying he should go, or just activists and vegans, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And Sandro's the equivalent of a 100-year-old man, and, he's shouldn't be moved. It's so dangerous. But of course, there's nobody ever gives any evidence of elephants that have died in transport that were sedation and a car accident. There was actually one of those weren't involved. You talk about him being 100 years old. He's getting such good care. Like Scott just said, they can't do blood work. They can't do foot trimming. We still know that foot disease, joint disease, top killer of elephants in captivity. So you're completely ignoring the fact that they can't provide him with that sort of care. The zoo has decided that he has tooth issues, and that's why he was losing so much weight and so much muscle mass. Have they actually looked at his teeth? No. Have they actually done any tests? No. Are they treating him appropriately, even if that's what's wrong with him? They're cutting up his food, which would be appropriate, but they're giving him a bunch of soybean oil to counteract his caloric loss, which is absolutely absurd. And this is a veterinarian claiming, look, he gets such good care. This is people who are essentially lying through their teeth to back up a facility just because it's a zoo and they don't want an animal to go to sanctuary. And we've heard this before, that it starts with elephants and then it goes to primates and then it's big cats and then what else? And then the zoos aren't going to have any animals and it's going to be this tragedy and blah, blah, blah. That is not what any of us are doing. At least that's not what we're doing. Clearly, I'm not going to talk for everybody, but we're not trying to take every elephant everywhere. We don't want zoos to be emptied, although love the model of Buenos Aires. But it's just absurd that people are willing to sell out their ethics and morals and like completely invest themselves in bashing this whole situation just because. It's absurd.
And then the argument of, what's next? The big cats, the baboons, or whatever it is. Where does Sandro tie into that still? This is supposed to be about Sandro, not about the zoo philosophy. It's not about the closing of zoos. This is about Sandro. You guys are saying that he matters most, but then you're throwing all these other animals and the culture of zoo and what's going to happen. You're going to close our zoo and lose our job. So, okay, that's not the argument. The argument is Sandro. What does Sandro need? And that gets lost in it. And no one cared. No one cared until there's a campaign to give him to a better life. And once there's a campaign and a judge decision to give him a better life, oh my God, now we have to save our Sandro. He matters so much to us.
So talking of judges, I mean, the first podcast we started and talking about why you established Elephant Sanctuary in Brazil was the fact that South America had very progressive laws confiscating elephants from circuses at the time due to bad handling. So what do these judges say if they then see the elephants in the zoo not being treated accordingly either? Or is the outside influence so strong to counteract a judge's decision making?
Well, Sandro's judge did say the zoo has 45 days to send him, and they have the right to appeal or they have the ability to comply. And we're waiting for that determination. They asked for an extension. They are working through that process right now and playing a game while going through that. Some members of the city are playing a game as they go through that process. But then you have another case like with Mason, who the judge is afraid to make the decision.
And he literally said, I don't want to make it by myself. So they moved it to a 3-judge panel. It's like, how absurd is that? That's your job. You don't want public backlash, so you're just not going to decide at all? Great. Awesome.
And why doesn't he want to make a decision? He doesn't want to make the decision because he's been told she might die in transport. Where's the data to support that? It doesn't exist. But all it takes is somebody, he might die in transport. He's not going to adapt. Oh, I don't want to be responsible for an elephant not adapting. I don't want to be responsible for an elephant dying in transfer. Well, you're not. You're responsible for giving the elephants a chance at a better life. You're giving an elephant a chance for proper care because she doesn't get it. She doesn't get foot care. She doesn't get anything. And then they have, quote unquote, experts. I think you talked about this earlier, Nadia, before the call, about a report that was done by an expert to show that Mason is in perfect health using a chart that is for African elephants. And even within that, misrepresenting that chart, saying she's a 5. Well, 5 is obese. But that's the data that's being sent to the judges, and the judges saying, oh, wow, a biologist said this, a veterinary said this. And you can say a biologist, a veterinary said, and everyone's like, oh, wow. But looking at the facts, not the opinion of a biologist or veterinarian. And if these scientists, as they say they are using scientific data, there is no question about what is the right thing. But they're not using the data that is showing the fact. They're using excerpts from the data to make their arguments. And there's nothing to support him staying or her staying or anybody staying. There's nothing to support these delays. And this has been going on for several years with Sandro.
And talking of Bambi, I mean, the judge ruling that he doesn't want to make the decision on his own. What about the judge that ruled that Bambi could go because Bambi and Mason were together? And I mean, they can look at the video. I mean, knowledge and information it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. There's no excuse not to have information. There's videos of Bambi being relocated, of Poopy being relocated. So I find it so difficult. It's just this logical side of me. I find it so difficult to understand that people are so ignorant that they just sort of disregard all the information out there showing that, yes, a transport is a long time, maybe 5 days in a lorry, but they can make it, and they do make it. And when they get to sanctuary on day 1, the transformation begins.
Nobody ever complains about an elephant being able to be transported when it's zoo to zoo. Zoos do it all the time. All the time. And do you ever hear, oh, it's dangerous, maybe we shouldn't do it? No, they do it with 50-year-old elephants. They do it with 60-year-old elephants. They've done it cross country. I mean, they do it all the time. It's only a concern when it's sending a zoo elephant to a sanctuary that all of a sudden it comes up that, oh, they could die. But even in this report, one of the things that was in this report was a photo of Bambi where she had tears under her one eye, and they literally said, see, clearly sanctuary doesn't make everything better. It's like, are you kidding? That's because we wash her eye. I mean, there's literally a report in there about Mason from the ophthalmologist who says they can't even do topical eye meds on Mason because she doesn't allow it. It's like, Bambi actually allows us to treat her eye. And on some days we rinse it with sterile saline so she has tears down her face. And this is just the level of absurdity we deal with when it comes to this stuff. And a judge doesn't know any better. And they're under public pressure. They don't want to make anybody unhappy. They have government officials who are pressuring them in one direction. You have these idiots on social media that get all this support because people think they actually know what they're talking about when they're just talking out there. You know what? It's just a combination of all of it.
An elephant's eyes tear. That happens. They get dust in their eyes. They weep. This is normal, but these things, the things that they use counter sanctuary are so barbaric, but they have traction because everyone's afraid of change. Everyone's afraid of progress. Everyone's afraid of something new. We're more comfortable keeping the same old derelict, negligent history than making positive change.
So to wrap up, before we get cut off, what is the solution? I mean, Brazil, be proud. You have got a fantastic elephant sanctuary. Send your elephants there. And when you talked about culture, reminded me of elephants in Japan, where people said, well, yes, I've been visiting Hanako all my life and she makes my life happy. And I think to myself, well, yeah, great, but you leave the zoo at the end of your visit and Hanako spent 60 years on a concrete slab. And as you talked about moving elephants, they get moved around in Japan as well for little breeding. Yes, let's move them from the most southern island in Japan right up to Kobe for her to, for this elephant to breed with the male. It's ridiculous, but back to South America. What is the solution?
I don't think there necessarily is a solution. I mean, we just all have to keep doing what we're trying to do and hope that somebody listens at some point, that we get the right judge, that somebody chooses to open their mind and acknowledge that maybe what they're seeing isn't the best for these animals. I mean, they talked to, in this video that this boob did on TikTok, it was from a news piece, and they talked to people who were there visiting Sandro, and the people in the piece said, I really like seeing him, but if it means that he gets to be happier, I'm okay with him going. So it's just more progress, educating more people, hoping that the world continues to progress in a way where we learn to value things, not for what they do for us, and I say things, I'm not talking just about elephants, but for who they are, what they are in general. But I do want to bring it back to Tammy for a minute, and I'm not going to be able to share this story. Scott can share it. He didn't get here, clearly, but that doesn't mean that things weren't different for him there. And Scott, you can talk about both the chick, the eco park, and what Augustina said.
First off, I am here in Mendoza, following up with Tammy, and then also checking on Kenya. I will say that it's tragic and sad and horrific to not see him there, knowing that his future is not going to be sanctuary. But there's also something that is incredibly, I guess, beautiful, knowing that there's no more elephants in that concrete hole. I was walking around that space today, and it's horrific. But the fact that he's not there is absolutely amazing. Coming here the other day, somebody said from the office said these elephants didn't have anything for years until you guys got involved. And as little as it may have seemed, we saw the change in these elephants. We saw the light. We saw their interaction. We can see in them. And she's like, we don't know elephants, but you can see in them with Kenya and with Tammy. And with Augustina, Kat, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but one of the most beautiful things with Tammy the other day is he started vocalizing. He started rumbling, which we've never heard. Never heard him rumble. And, those folks that were here allow these elephants to be seen. And they bring sanctuary to him, because we've talked about sanctuary being more than the space. The sanctuary is a culture of respect. It's a culture of listening to them and seeing them and letting their voice be heard. And never giving a little bit of that. Kenya's opening up more and more all the time. She's so much more comfortable now. Tammy rumbled. If that's the least he gets, if that's the least that we could do, at least he felt seen.
I don't know what to say. I'm crying now.
Well, that wraps up our podcast for this week. Join us in 2 weeks' time. And we don't have to wrap this up. Just sit with the emotion of knowing that we are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. And there are things that are stand in our way, and there's going to be elephants that don't make it. We don't stop that fight. We don't stop pushing in that direction to give these elephants whatever it is for however long it is, whether it's 5 days at sanctuary or 2 months of just being seen in the hellhole within which they live. But the fight doesn't stop. Our work continues on, trying to do as much as we can for whoever we can.
Thank you for that. Yeah, let's just send out positive hope and that the judges rule in favor of the elephants that you are fighting for. And we'll catch up for our next episode. Bye, you two.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
That's all that we have time for this week. We hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Another great zero-cost way to support the podcast is by leaving a 5-star rating or a glowing review, as this helps other people discover the podcast. Thank you so much for your support. And until we meet up for our next episode, take care.